My name is Kylie Gilbert. I'm a citizen of the UK and of Australia. In 2018, I travelled to Iran to attend an academic conference in my role as a lecturer at the University of Melbourne. As I was preparing to depart Iran on the 12th of September 2018, I was arrested at Imam Khomeini Airport by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I was interrogated overnight at a safe house facility in North Tehran, and I then spent 1 week imprisoned inside a hotel which was under the control of the Revolutionary Guards. Following that, I was transferred to the 2A unit of Evin Prison. I subsequently spent 23 months in this highly restrictive unit. Following that, I spent 3 months in the Qarchak public prison before being transferred back to the 2A unit for 5 weeks. I was ultimately sent back to Australia in a prisoner swap deal, having spent 2 years and 3 months deprived of my liberty, entirely unjustly, on no actual factual basis whatsoever. During this time, I suffered gross mistreatment, psychological and physical torture, the trauma of which remains with me to this day. Ebrahim Raisi was appointed head of Iran's judiciary some months after my initial arrest. He was head of Iran's judiciary during the 3 court sessions that I attended, and during my conviction and sentencing hearings, during the denial of my appeal, and during the transfer that I underwent to Qarchak prison. I therefore hold President Ebrahim Raisi ultimately responsible for the mistreatment and the injustice that was meted out to me. In court, there was an utter lack of any due process whatsoever, evidence of the utter lack of rule of law which exists within Iran under the stewardship of Mr. Raisi. The judge, Abul Qasim Salavati, was clearly a puppet of the Revolutionary Guard Corps and not capable of making independent decisions. I was denied any access to my lawyer whatsoever to discuss my case. Indeed, I wasn't even aware that I had a lawyer until a couple of weeks before my second court hearing. The first court hearing comprised the reading out of the Bill of Indictment, which was translated for me into English. This was the moment that I learnt that I was being charged with espionage for the quote-unquote tyrannical Zionist entity. There was no evidence whatsoever to substantiate these charges. I was unable to present evidence in my own defence in this sham trial. No documents, no witness statements, nothing. Indeed, I didn't even understand what was happening in the trial because its proceedings were not translated into English for me, and I didn't speak Farsi. The only part of my trial which was translated was direct questions from the judge himself or the prosecutor, and my responses to those questions. Following a long delay of several months, and my final court session having been concluded, I eventually learnt that I'd been sentenced to 10 years in prison for these ludicrous charges. My appeal was rejected, and I wasn't even able to stand in front of a judge and make my appeal. It was a purely administrative matter. I was then subjected to 7 months of solitary confinement, month on month, following my verdict, despite Iranian law mandating that I be transferred at that moment to a public prison. In total, I spent 12 months of the 2 years and 3 months I had been imprisoned in Iran in solitary confinement. I was subjected to a range of different psychological and physical tortures, and was routinely subjected to cruel and degrading and humiliating mistreatment. I was denied access to medical treatment. I was denied access to medication, which had actually been prescribed to me by the prison doctor. And I was exposed to infectious diseases, particularly within Qarchak prison. Ebrahim Raisi was the head of the judiciary throughout this entire period. He is ultimately responsible for my mistreatment. I wrote to Ebrahim Raisi on a number of occasions via official channels, but never received a reply. In my letters to Raisi, I outlined the mistreatment that I had suffered, the degradation, and the denial of my most basic human rights, including under Iranian law. Ebrahim Raisi, in his capacity as head of judiciary I actually visited the 2A unit in Evan Prison, where I was being held in 2019 to inspect the facilities, but declined to visit the women's wing. Female prisoners requested a meeting with him. He declined to meet with them, and instead only visited the men. I am taking part in this lawsuit under the Torture Victim Protection Act in order to hold Ebrahim Raisi accountable for one injustice, my own, which he has had a hand in committing, amongst the huge tide and flood of injustice that throughout his career as an official of the Islamic Republic of Iran he has perpetrated. Thank you.